Dear God, I ask to help Philippines. Help you, pray.
What?
Welcome to the 6th Dreams of Consciousness podcast. I'm Adrian Saul, and I've got a special internet friend with me. Would you introduce yourself over the mic?
Hey folks, this is Ian again from Brimstone Fire and Demiurge Digital Studios.
My buddy Ian, who you probably remember from the last Philippines podcast. It took us about a year, but we figured out that we can actually do this when we're not in the same room or even the same country together. This is the Filipino hardcore podcast, and we've been talking about doing this for about 6 months at this point, right?
Yeah, I even shaved my head for it.
Yeah, our audio listeners won't get the full effect, but Ian's got his wife beater on, he's got his shaved head, so he's looking very much the authentic hardcore kid right now.
This is really great tech. Imagine we don't have to like you said, we really don't have to be in the same city for that matter.
The technology in a way is a godsend because, especially as we're talking about all these regional scenes, which, you know, for the most part I don't really get a chance to visit more than once a year. You know, I'm in the Philippines maybe 3 or 4 times a year. I was in Bangkok about a month ago, but honestly I'm not there that often. But as I do more and more of these, having the ability to talk to people over Skype or Google Hangouts or whatever we have makes doing this much, much easier. Probably not going to affect the output rate. I'm probably only going to be doing one every month or every couple months, but at least the potential is there. So we talked about doing this podcast way back, I guess, whenever the last Philippines podcast came out. The last Philippine podcast was the 3rd mixtape, so that would have been probably June, right? In that time, there's actually a pretty big article in the Malaysian Shock-A-Nazine about the hardcore band Dead Ends, and to a lesser extent, the whole Filipino scene. So I don't know if I'd call it coincidence, or maybe the time is just sort of right, and there's a lot of people talking about this right now. The Filipino scene has been, at least the hardcore scene has been on a lot of people's minds. On the last podcast, we talked a little bit about your roots and your experience with the scene. Let's go back a little bit to the history. So, you got into the scene sometime to the mid to late 80s?
I'd say it's more like the late 80s to early 90s, because in the mid 80s we were the kids that were being warned that the punk rockers were Satanists. I don't know if you've read anything about that before, but that was the case. Most of the people were afraid of them. Apparently, they allegedly uh, sacrificed kids to Satan.
So before the big black metal panic in Europe and other parts of the world, and of course, the black metal panic here in Malaysia, punk kids in the Philippines were actually targeted as Satanists. Was there any particular reason? Black shirts, antisocial behavior, funny hair?
All that funny hair, everything. That, and apparently the anarchy logo was satanic. It's like every other politician's wife was Tippy Gore or something like that. Someone's either trying to be a little self-righteous about the whole thing, or I think this is from what I assume, because it was a very turbulent time in the country right before they ousted Marcos. Most of the punk rockers, most of them, well, the musicians who were involved in in anything that has anything to do with, I wouldn't even call it rebellion, but just, they spoke out against the dictatorship. They wrote songs about it, and a lot of them were put under surveillance. A lot of them were vilified publicly because they were so-called enemies of the state.
So let's make this a little bit personal, because we talked about it a little bit on the last podcast, but some of your earliest bands were local punk bands. What were the venues like, and what was the scene like? Were there a lot of people? Was it a very niche thing that you kind of had to know somebody to get into?
Yeah, well, it was kind of like that. That's you basically just described it. I was lucky enough to be part of a group of friends that, because our neighborhood was already punk saturated, if you want to say that. It's all those punks from nearby, wherever, they all just gravitated to my neighborhood because we had stores that sold Red Horse off. Like, they spread their influence across there, so we were just very, very fortunate that we already knew a lot of the people back then. And even before I got into punk rock and everything, they were already my friends. And I think we talked about that before, about being mentored in, because I think my friends and I, we were some of the lucky ones, because it wasn't as difficult during my time as it was during their time. Like, the old guys had a hard time getting these things together. A lot of them were forced to take on really bad venues, and sometimes just have the gigs being canceled in between because of fights breaking out. It was really a really violent time for them. And a lot, if you've known a few Filipinos who are kind of crazy. It's just the whole Filipino macho mentality. They're all out there to prove uh, who's the bigger guy, no matter how small you are. I don't know if that makes sense, but
What were the venues like? Are we talking about bars? Were some of them rehearsal studios?
funny that you mentioned that. We had a friend who owned a rehearsal studio, and he'd have like little gigs that he'd throw there, and usually the people who rehearse there would be the ones playing. And this guy's rehearsal studio has been around for ages, and imagine all the punks went to him. Most of whoever from that area, even from out of town, would converge in that one spot in Mandaluyong, and they actually played a kind of weird show. It wasn't all punk rockers. There were a bunch of other musicians there as well. It was those are kind of the shotgun venues, you say. It's or just a very impromptu show. And then we'd have the occasional basketball court.
Even now, getting gear in Southeast Asia is a little bit tricky. It tends to be very pricey. It all has to be imported. Sometimes you can get local knockoffs or Taiwanese-made knockoffs. What was the gear like in that era? Were people able to get like Marshalls and PVs and stuff like that?
Although those are rare. I saw a few pictures from some shows. Basically, from what I remember and from what I was told, like my cousin used to be very active, one of my older cousins, the guy who got me to Dead Ends in the first place. He has a bunch of pictures, and he told me, oh, actually, I've seen some of their shows when I was a kid. He dragged me over to one of these shows here in some of the Makati, somewhere near Cash and Carry. And it was they actually had real amps for a change, because most of the time anything in that era, like closer, which is strange. Back then, earlier in the 80s, I think you couldn't get anything else but real amps. towards the 90s, everything just went to shit. So only the clubs had the real good stuff. And the occasional show would have one or two real amps, and it's mostly stuff that's made in Recto, in Raon.
So basically, local Filipino made stuff.
Yeah, amp bootlegs.
On the podcast is, I'm actually not sure how to say this. Tame the Tikbalang?
Tikbalang. It has that long, no, not really long A, but pretty sure they have the same mythology in Malaysia or any other part of Southeast Asia, because
Well, explain what it is first.
oh yeah, a tikbalang would be what we lovingly call a reverse centaur, right? So instead of a dude who's got the lower part of his body like it's a horse, right? It's the other way around. This guy's got like the horse head on a human body.
So the band Tame the Tik, I can't say the word. Tame the Tikbalang.
Say it with me. It's tikbalang.
Tikbalang.
Yeah. Tame the tikbalang.
Yeah. So what's the history behind the band?
They were a bunch of guys that loved the same stuff, the typical band origins. They all loved the same kind of thing. They kind of like 24/7 Spies, Living Color. They have the most talented, established, I wouldn't say established, but the most talented set of musicians put together. And that the biggest appeal to me of the band was the music itself, the way they wrote their songs and how they got all that groove into that with all that speed at the same time. They have a good understanding of how music will affect you in a way. It's like they're writing riffs that sound hardcore, but it's groovy in a really soulful way, I have to say. Because well, the history of the band was their singer used to not sing in the way that he does now, or the way that he did before they disbanded. He used to sing like for real. He was a really good singer, and he knew his stuff, and he knew how to like place it, and it worked with the music so well. Well, the constant member of Tikbalang would be Boyet. He is a guitar player from Betrayed and Ethnic Faces, from the old days, and Russell, their singer. Russell now is used to work in the music industry. He was always connected to the music industry at any given point, and up till recently, when he just switched careers, and he's now a fitness coach. He's like one of the CrossFit pioneers here in the country, and he really brought it. And so the two constant members of that are Russell and Boyet, the two guys, and they've changed drummers and the bassist a few times. It's still essentially the same band. It's still the same music that people are so in tune to. They were well received on all parts of whatever scene it was they were in at that time, because to be honest, they didn't really the people who were involved in it were part of the old scene. Like they were in the underground scene before the whole club scene made it big. The band actually thrived in the beginning of the whole Club Dread era, when their formative years, if you want to call it that.
Would you say that they're an influential band in the scene?
Oh yes, yeah. The band's music is probably the thing that really carried them through. It's the politics isn't didn't become as important anymore, because the music just, it was relatable. It was easy. It was a very, very easy thing to absorb. And their bassist had to leave because of priorities. He became part of this really, really popular funk group POT at that time, and he was the outside the singer, and most of the musicians related to him the most, because I think he single-handedly taught a lot of us how to appreciate the bass. It's probably one of the if not the best bass player in the country.
How long were they active?
Around 20 years. That would be That would be a fair number to put in there. They're active. Just let's just say that they're getting their sea legs just about the same time that Dead Ends was closing that door. Right? It's just about the same time. So I'd say probably almost 20 years active. If I'm not mistaken, that I think I heard Boyet or Russell say that it was like 18 years into the.
How would you describe their influence on the scene? It sounds like what you're saying is they brought a more musical element into the scene, into the Filipino hardcore scene.
If
So-
I'm not too bold to say, I'm pretty sure there's a ton of bass players out there who pick the bass up because of seeing Mali Paraguya play bass, the original bass player on Tikbalang. And he was very, very influential on a lot of people, myself included. It's just considering that as a standard, he's only a quarter of the band, right? And he wasn't part of the band. We everyone grew to love anymore. He was already doing his own thing when Tikbalang started getting embraced into the underground again. I think there was the turning point there was when they got interviewed in some of the really radical zines that criticized them to I don't know. It was great because they kind of bridged the gap there. It's like they showed that Tikbalang was part of they're open to the criticism given to them being a club band, being a dread band as how it was called. And people loved their songs and people were just dying left and right to get to be part of the tribute. You'll hear it in some of the bands. There are bands who are doing the whole new school hardcore thing that you'll hear the Tikbalang influence in it. It's because the musicality is of a different level.
just no better shame than that of another man. You think you're smart, so knowledgeable perhaps, but from what I've read, you're just a piece of crap. Your gods are aliens, hallelujahs and praises. All I see is them in your cheap short pages. Better get down, cause you're way above your head. Better be a clown or be a puppet instead. Hey man, you're nothing. Hey man, you're shit. You're infecting the world with all your fear. Hey man, you're nothing. Hey man, you're shit. Do the world a favor and just fucking quit. What are you up to now? Covering your mom's house. It's the lies she said. That's why people want you dead. You better run, you better hide. False stories, ruined lives, expectations, conflicting views. Better truth before the proofs. Told cases, sort of facts, all the crimes and bullshit. Shut the fuck up, man. Remember this, pen and paper doesn't make you a writer. 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 A disadvantage, a risk I'll have to take. Will I ever falter? A question don't keep me awake. I see through the outcome, assuring that loss will prevail. Grieving towards mistakes, my battle will surely fail. Fail. I don't care what is left of me. I will still be free. What hinders the will in me? My own anxiety. Kill whatever comes to mind. Conflicts of every kind. Conflicts of every kind. Victory through will. Nothing can hide from the truth. Conflict with my instincts. I know that I can break through. I'll attack if I must. To pacify what's within. It's a chance that I'll take. But the enemy's gonna win. Win. I don't care what is left of me. I will still be free. What hinders the will in me? My own anxiety. Kill whatever comes to mind. Conflicts of every kind. Conflicts of every kind. I don't care what is left of me. I will still be free. What hinders the will in me? My own anxiety. Kill whatever comes to mind. Conflicts of every kind.
We talked about how alternative basically became very, very mainstream in the '90s. Was punk part of a growing underground movement, or do you think that the punk scene was separate?
In a way, it was separate. It had its own thing going. It's its own little subculture, subgenre, whatever. But the funny thing about that was in the '90s there was this weird but non. It wasn't really acknowledged scene. It wouldn't even call it unity. It's more like an there was an umbrella scene in general, and you'd have old, not really, not really that old, but you'd have like name bands like from the punk scene. Some people who are kind of who are already playing alongside some of the more I don't say grittier mainstream acts, if there is such a thing. But it wasn't really, there was no real separation acknowledgement. There are a few people who didn't like the club scene, and then there are others who grew up in the club scene who are kind of like raised on that, on good equipment and not having to fear for your life when you're at the show. So it was something like that. And it's only now that that kind of gelled together, and some of the most well-loved bands from like the 90s and stuff are now doing the thing along with kids who grew up in on the other side of the tracks, if you want to say that.
Let's talk about the music. Some of the stuff I've heard, like Dead Ends, particularly, sounds very much like early American hardcore, like the Circle Jerks, and maybe, obviously the singer from Dead Ends got compared to Jello Biafra a lot. So there's a Dead Kennedys influence there. A lot of the later stuff sounds very much like New York hardcore or East Coast hardcore. That much more metallic, heavier sound. Do you remember a change? Do you remember when one style became more popular or more prominent?
Yeah, come to think of it, there was this point where some of our friends started dressing differently. One of my favorite people, and he used to be part of like he a bad punk. We go about calling them that. They're always in some sort of fight, and some of their friends are missing teeth. Stuff like that. And I've not seen him in ages, probably a year, two, maybe more. And then the next time I see this guy, hair's bleached, and he's got some hoodie and big ass shorts, skate shoes and everything. It's like, oh wow, where did that come from? It's just even the music that he was listening to changed completely. It's
Where did it come from? Because finding a lot of stuff, particularly the more underground hardcore and metal stuff, was hard when I was in high school. So that would have been, I guess, like 93 to 97, like that period of time. But I remember very specifically finding Sick of It All in Odyssey Records, and Odyssey was the big chain music store that was in all the malls. So clearly either there was a market for it, or for whatever reason, kids found New York hardcore because bands like Sick of It All had signed to major labels, and so BMG or whoever the Filipino distribution was at the time, putting it in the record stores.
I would go so far as to describe it like that. Yeah, I know some people who actually went out the way to like risk buying weird looking cassettes, right? Because they've got that crazy. I know some people who did that. I am not one of those people. Because I was lucky enough to know a little better because I was, mentored into it, and I don't envy how other people got through this. They really went through eras of kids now grew up on Corn, Limp Bizkit, and all that bullshit, and now are trying to buy back whatever it is by just being more satanic, I guess.
Yeah.
Impossible.
When I was getting into metal, it wasn't fucking Vaughn and Blasphemy and stuff like that. It was it was Machine Head, it was Pantera, and it was Sepultura, it was Biohazard. It was the stuff that was commercial and popular at the time. It's like you come into whatever era you come into. Okay, so if they're not discovering hardcore, and specifically New York hardcore, through the more mainstream channels, how are they discovering it? Because we're talking about a pre-internet era. So it's not like, it's not like you can go on YouTube and, like right now, Malaysia in particular, but I think this is prominent throughout Southeast Asia. Kids are going on YouTube and they're seeing how, whatever band that's big right now is dressing and how they play and how the kids dance. And whenever you go to a local show, it's almost like carbon copy of whatever you saw on YouTube the night before. Like kids are latching on to the visual aspects, all the superficial aspects of the music, much more readily than they would have done, 15, 20 years ago when we were getting into this music. So before the internet, how are hardcore kids in the Philippines discovering this music?
Well, this is major props to two specific people. I don't want to like get into specifics though, right? Well, I just said specific people, but couple of guys put together one of the what I'd say it's like one of the most tastefully executed distribution methods for bootleg. They were called crossblood. Back in the 90s, they were the source for everything because if I'm not mistaken, they were already doing the whole snail mail thing for ages, and these are some of the older guys doing it. And I have to say, a lot of the new stuff that I heard, some of my most favorite tunes, I got from them. I got from that little distro. Uh, in a way, they kind of shaped uh, my listening spectrum and made me realize that all this is shit. I turned my back on Slayer for those guys. Cheesy as it may sound, music is life changing, and these people who gave me the music, gave me these drugs. I thank them for it. They were the ones who were responsible for spreading the whole thing, single handedly, if you might say.
So you said they were a mail order distro. Were they importing? Were they buying CDs from overseas distros and then like taping it or making bootlegs of it from that?
Yeah, you know how it is, right? They yeah, like I said, they creatively distributed the music from yeah, they made bootlegs and they made really nice cassette versions of every damn CD they got, or if it were in cassette form or vinyl at the time that they got it, they reproduce it. And yeah, I got all my first Snapcase albums there, and Strife. I was a big fan of like Warzone. They got me into that. And there's a few obscure bands like Backlash. Nobody knows about that. I found them again. I'm gonna share it one time, but it's great. I got a lot of good stuff from them.
Going back to the local distros that were distributing stuff at the time, what was the quality like?
Are you talking about the bootlegging guys?
Yeah.
That was great. It was this one case that I got. I think it was one of the Snapcase albums I got. Or was it Donuts? One of those that had a problem. They replaced it. It's just a problem with the dub itself. But generally, it's just they give it to you in a standard quality cassette, and you can imagine how that'll sound like a disc to cassette transfer. It sounds pretty good. It sounded pretty good. Instead of using color Xerox, they photocopy it on colored paper.
Okay.
See, so I remember my Backlash cassette was, I think, neon yellow. And then I think my Strife, they were following a theme here. The was it One Truth or something? The early Strife album. I think it was One Truth. Yeah, it was on a purpley kind of like colored craft paper.
Yeah, some of those bootlegs, because I got most of the cassettes at Odyssey, so they were professionally made. So the quality was always fairly good, except every so often you'd get a cassette that wouldn't play. Like it would play to about halfway, and then it would get too tightly wound. And if you were listening to it on an auto reverse Walkman, then it would get too tightly wound, and then it would just automatically reverse halfway through. I do remember getting one locally made bootleg of a Dead Kennedys album. I think it was the first Dead Kennedys album, and that was one of the worst bootlegs I've ever gotten, because the EQing was really heavy on one side and really light on the other, so essentially you're just listening to it on the right speaker. At some points the CD actually started skipping, and they just kept they just recorded it as it was. But at the same time, we're talking like, what, 60 pesos, 70 pesos for a bootleg at the time. So it's not like you can really complain when you're talking about $2, you know what I mean? It's like you kind of get what you pay for.
guns. Now the hoe gets even deeper because of you. Well, what do you say? You want to get the message and pop your way. And he jumps up, throws on the traffic grade. Try to bury all the more just to scream at you. Become rich and say the morning nature. But the whole girl wrong, fuck the lie. That's it, bye. The hungry cat. you know? Could you be my enemy? Affection for you in my heart, you are mine. I'll be damning you to stay out your life. Taste the serving of my negativity. What do you know? Could you be my enemy?
Where does Goo fit into the scene? Because they're much more on the melodic punk side.
All right, yeah. So now there's a really good thing happening with the punk hardcore scene. There's still some riffs happening because there's some people who are still hung up on the old days and how it should be. And there's some people who are very insensitive to politics, and there are some people who just who generally don't care. The clashes with the personalities in general, but I've never seen this kind of, I hate using the word unity, but it's a kind of united front, and it's you'll see the people who are into the politics, people who are into the music, and they're in one show. There's some I don't know, principles are still upheld to a point. They still prefer not to include some of the bands who are more sellouts. It's something like that. Goo is now part of this general family, which is I don't know. It's probably the healthiest I've seen the punk hardcore scene. This is the healthiest state that I've seen it in. Shows are not just random left and right shows. These are very healthy, very I would say populated. I guess would be a good way of saying it. They're it's an excuse to see your friends on the weekend. They're very happy. I've seen them all together. It's like a little family reunion every time, and Goo fits in really well with this scene. And considering that they're really old band, that one not Dead Ends old, but they were around for a while. They've been doing, some of these songs are 20 years old, I think, or something in that area. Some of these songs are really old.
Do they fit into that like Green Day, Offspring, early '90s melodic punk explosion?
They were melodic punk like Descendants were melodic punk, right? So it wasn't new school at all. Which the funny thing about it was, whoever started that sound, whether it be some SST band or a Green Day, right? It's so really universally appealing that it just you can't really gauge it on eras.
Let's talk about a couple of the things that are coming out soon. One is the tribute to Dead End CD, and the other is the new Goo album. Who's on the Dead Ends tribute?
Well, we did a little revamp on the lineup right now.
Is it a Dead Ends tribute, or is it Dead Ends / Throw tribute?
Dead Ends mostly, because I wouldn't think that what the point would be, because Throw would be in the tribute as well. They're the ones doing the title track.
What's the title track?
Ingay ng Mundo. This is, I think, the Throw track that I gave you.
Yeah. What does it mean?
Noise of the world. Noise. Ingay is noise in general. Mundo, yeah, it's the world. The noise of the world. So the tribute compilation is called Salamat sa Ingay. Thank you for the noise. Alright, so generally the plan was to have Goo, I have West, I have the band Embrace the Absurd, part of it as well. I did have plans to include Mass Hypnosia. I have Gilingan playing in the compilation too. I also have No Peace in Silence, Nuclear Punishment. Yep, generally the lineup is pretty good. I had to kind of revamp it.
Are you recording most of the songs yourself?
Yes, that is the idea, to try to get all these bands to come over here and and lay the tracks in here. Because I think my goal is to have the sound as uniform as possible, and at the same time, I don't want to pressure the guys to like have to put money out if they want to go to another studio to do it. And I think the best way I could help with this is for them to come over here, and we'll just set it up.
And do you have a release date yet?
Yeah, we were pushing for May of 2014 is what I wanted to, because it will fall on the 20th anniversary of Dead End's last album. Just gauging it from how it's going now, 2014 is a steady date. It's not. I'm not gonna let this like go past that at this point. It's important that we have it out by 2014. We have several bands that have already finished a lot of the work, and some are still in pre-prod. But I guess once we start this going, it's gonna go straight.
How long have you been working on it?
Ever since we opened the studio, I guess almost 2 years now. It got me like a good year or half of a year to like just to try to get the people together, and I actually pitched this idea to Al way back, and he was actually quite happy about it. They originally didn't include Throw in the lineup because I pitched the idea to him at the time that Throw was supposedly gonna go on hiatus or something. It's just for their 10th year anniversary, Throw decided to like call it quits or go on holiday.
And the other album that's coming out is the new Glue album.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too. This is coming out much earlier. This is coming out on December 22nd here. And they're launching it over at Chromebox, one of those clubs in Marikina now. It's great. It's a bit nostalgic because the band is generally from Marikina.
What can you say about it? What's the music like?
Very melodic. It's melodic punk rock. I hate doing that. Just getting comparisons to a popular band or anything, because I guess it's on my part it's like a cop out because I know the material. That was like, oh, we need to try to get the sound of this a bit, right? Not in the songwriting or the playing, but just the a bit of the production into it. They want it to sound a certain way in certain songs, which is great because they kind of let me just. It's like they just let me go on this thing. It's like, hey, just do what you want, make it. They had their preferences and everything. Once we follow that down to a T, which is which I have to say, they knew what they wanted from day one, and it's what made the production uber smooth.
Is this their first album in a long time?
Oh, it's the first album ever.
It's their first album ever?
First album ever. They were part of several compilations back then. I remember they even went on TV at one point. Okay, like I was telling you earlier, it's like there was a blurring of there was no real distinction, black and white back then. It was all sort of gray. But it was very important that people who wrote and played good music were recognized. So that was a big deal, because bias aside, no one really played this kind of music like they did. They kind of like they were pushing it forward at that point. They kind of had their own spin on it, but this time it was like punk rock and melodic post hardcore stuff, you know.
Deep inside of me feeds this anger that won't set me free. The greed that takes all I see still leaves me empty with nothing left that's real. I look inside myself, I look inside myself. I don't like what I see, what has become of me. I look inside myself, I look inside myself. I don't like what I enemy. My worst enemy is me. Enemy.
Dead Ends is a name that's fairly prominent throughout Southeast Asia, though I don't think anybody outside really knows about them. Were they the first Filipino hardcore band? One of the first? How would you describe them?
They were the first to play that well. Maybe it's unfair to say, but someone else was considered the fastest band in the land. And with a right to rightfully claim, you know. But it was different. My impression of them was always different from the others because for some strange reason I could the angry words worked really well with the music, and it became believable, if that's the right way of like describing it. To me, the dead ends were believable, right? And everyone else, although they were great musicians and they wrote really good songs, some of my favorite songs were written by their contemporaries, but something about the dead ends really stood out to me on the side of believability. There was real anger, real it was, yeah, it was real. I think that was the not taking anything away from anyone else and not trying to be political here or anything. It's like I enjoyed the music as well, but the dead end spoke to me in that way.
Well, when you say their anger was real or believable, what were their songs like? What were they singing about?
Yeah, well, it's mostly dictator era material. And then you'd also have the occasional thing about it's like a far cry from an actual unity song, right? So it wasn't really like that at all, but it was the closest thing we got to that point. Like they were talking about how mga gago lang mahilig sa gulo, right? Something like that, because people just you hardly see each other through the year, and you're fighting every chance you get. It's like you find an excuse. That's typical Filipino macho boy, just trying to get that out of their system. It's pissing contest each time, and then one faction won't allow one to be more macho than the other, and they fight.
How long were Dead Ends around?
Not so sure. Let's just because I discovered them. My cousin introduced them to me in 88, 89, and he tried to push them towards me like really, really hard because I kept telling him that local shit is shit, right? So I kind of he kind of
Why did you think local shit is shit?
because it is. It was. It was really bad. This was the time that I was listening to a lot of new wave. A lot of the stuff was shit, and a lot of the stuff was derivative shit to start with. It's like some guy trying to be Robert Smith.
Why were Dead Ends different? What made Dead Ends special?
It would be unfair to say they were like special or different in a way because I didn't have any experience with Dead Kennedys. So when I heard them first, it kind of I heard the Dead Ends before I heard the Dead Kennedys.
So you thought Dead Kennedys sounded like Dead Ends?
No, not really. Then it's more like when I finally heard Jello, it's like, oh, I really appreciated a lot of late Dead Ends, especially the last one, Ingay, which really didn't sound anything at all like the Dead Kennedys. It's just it was when I was backtracking with my cousin's cassettes that I kind of found the comparison eventually. So I heard them. They were fast, and it was just that was what got me into that thing. It was fast.
Was that the appeal of Dead Ends? They were faster than everybody else at the time?
I mean, they weren't. Someone else had the title, the fastest band in the land, and they were equally as loved. And I would say that they're from a different. I wouldn't say they were from different scenes, but a certain kind of person loved the other band, and a certain kind of person would love one more. Well, the other. It's basically that. It's a separation. It's preference. I like apples. Guy likes oranges, and some people equally, like them both, and it's very nostalgic to them, especially this day and age. They're very happy that members of, well, one band is actually still the band. It's still them, and Dead Ends is now Throw. So,
Right.
so people are very happy that they're still around, that they're still playing, and it's great. It's a big nostalgia trip. It's just that, like, can't help but have separation of fans. It's like basketball, baseball. It's all that. It's the same deal.
Dead Ends early on were writing songs in Tagalog. So I feel like if because that's something that not a lot of bands do. Even Swedish bands and Norwegian bands. It was almost a coup when the first black metal band started writing songs in Norwegian. Like it meant that there was something different about their music. Was that the case with Dead Ends as well?
I wasn't old enough to recall it in detail. I was probably in grade school when they first came out. 84, 83, maybe earlier. So I was into cartoons then. Possibly into Duran Duran and Spando Ballet. I'm pretty sure they weren't the first ones who wrote songs in Filipino. So what was the case there is, I think it's safe to say, and this is my opinion, generally, generated from the fact that listening to all that stuff got me to think that Dead Ends probably wasn't the first one to write anything in Filipino, but they were the first ones to write it with a certain coherence and a certain, yeah, ironically, an academic flair. Because see, Al, the main songwriter, the singer songwriter for the group, is he was a teacher. He was an English lit teacher. He taught in college and in high school. So his stuff was well written. It's probably one of the biggest things that also drew me into that kind of thing. Because lyrics are major. It's it's one thing to have a song that would have just plain old local profanity. Puta nga, puta nga, puta nga. It's just you can do that, but it doesn't mean that Aldi Malanta doesn't swear. He does, but he writes it in really well.
Dead Ends broke up because their bassist died, correct?
Yeah, I don't think they really recovered from that. They were brothers, basically. So I think that was when it signed off, and I think Al took a step back, a step away from the whole thing for a while. It took a while. He didn't get back into it into like at least 6 or maybe 5 years, maybe. I'm not sure. Because they came out again as Throw in 2000. I think that's where I think there was buzz about that whole thing because we were already strap on. We were already playing a couple of years as strap on at that time, and there was buzz generated by, oh, yeah, it's Aldo Malantas forming Dead Ends again, because we didn't know what the band was called.
How big were Dead Ends at their peak? Because I've heard that they got offers to play variety shows and things like that.
Yeah, that's the same. That's the thing I was talking about earlier about the scene in general in the Philippines. It was like there was no clear line between mainstream and the underground. It was a very open-ended thing. Yes, there were underground venues and events. There were underground people. Mainstream people can't just go in and play, but some of the bands were got big enough to be part of bigger things. I guess would be the way to justify that. It's not like back then it wasn't much of an issue. I guess it's gonna sound like a double standard now because, oh, I'm all about, oh, bullshit, big festival events that they hold off in some in like it's in some pent together stadium in Quezon City, right? And they have like crowds watching all the mainstream bands, and it's just, and then I'm gonna be some against something, and I'm not gonna have a problem with the Dead Ends playing for TV, right? It may appear as a double standard, and it's up to them to think that it is, but they're just dumb if they think that way. It was a different time. It was a different era. It wasn't a. It wasn't a. There was no. I don't know if you could say that the ground rules were not set yet, or it was fair to say something like that. It was more like there were no shows, and that was a show, right? So the gigs were few and far apart, and then music was very important to them, and playing it was important to them, as opposed to how it is now that like there's a show every weekend, there's a show almost every night.
One of the things that strikes me about the Throw stuff, because you actually gave me the Throw CD way back in 2004. Yeah, I think that's when we met. And I didn't know any of the history of Throw and Dead Ends. And so one of the things that struck me about Throw was, like we were talking about before, it was very much in the New York hardcore style. And like I've heard a little bit of the Dead End stuff where it starts to get a little bit more East Coast hardcore, but there does seem to be a divide between the Throw stuff and the Dead End stuff, in the sense that the Dead End stuff, at least early on, was very punky, and Throw is definitely hardcore.
You know, that in the whole melodic punk, melodic hardcore thing, which was going on. I guess, yeah, it's fair to say that it's easy comparison to make, but I'm guessing it's more like probably hard to pull off material like Black Flag and Minor Threat here the same way that it's received now, as opposed to back then. Generally Filipinos are melodic people. We love our little melodies and harmonies, and even some of the pioneers of the new style of hardcore. Some of the guys from Crossblood, they put it up, right? So they were from down south. Even they had very melodic approaches to songwriting, even if they were already uh, they were basically the grandfathers of the throwdown hardcore style, right here in the country. But they were still making a lot of melodic songs. Some of those are really still very very good songs, and they were closer to my generation than I was to the Dead Ends. In fact, I've seen them only once as a group, and then soon after they split up. Never got a chance to see them again. And it was the band's called Biofeedback. They're from Laguna, and they were, like I said, they were the grandfathers of that kind of New York style hardcore, the whole new school, if you want to call it new school hardcore. They were the ones who started that here. But even they wrote a lot of melodic stuff. My personal take on it is the drummers are better now, or during the era that they came back. Drummers are better. They just not better in a general sense, because you can't just gauge it on rudiments and skill and versatility. But this kind of drumming, it's all this excellence. It's a very 90s thing. It's a very late thing. It's it is for me what changed everything, because the drummers all started getting better and better. There's I think if I were given time, I could probably chronicle how it changed, and it's only because of the drummers that changed it. It's huge. Like the Dead Ends last album, it was they got a really 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 fast drummer, like, and they made a speed metal album. That was a far cry from the beginning of everything. They just threw it all out there. I guess that's how skill, the improvement of skill, and the accessibility to new gear. Everyone just got better and better, and that's what changed it for everyone. That's what changed Filipino music in general. Was what I think. especially this kind of music, the aggressive, fast variety. It changed when the drummers started getting better.
Yeah.
It don't matter. None of this matters.